How do you like that?
I'll get my disco shoes on.
Wow.
Reminds me of my first year of sobriety. That's the way, I like it.
Hello, it's 1975, and this is AA Beyond Belief.
Yeah.
How you doing? Oh boy, it's good to be here. It's another Friday night, and we're going to live stream. And today we have a special guest, Angela and I do. His name is Joe C., and he's from Rebellion Dogs Radio. How you doing, Joe?
Hi, I'm special, and I'm an alcoholic.
Good to see
glad
you.
to be here, and glad to be talking about this. Before we went on, I was just saying that there are so many people brand new to AA, and so many people just finding secular AA for the first time, that it's good to sort of review how we got here, because there's a lot of people that this isn't old hat for. And the longer we've been doing this, the faster things seem to go. It used to be, how long will it take us to get to 100 meetings, right?
Yeah. It's been an incredible trip for me anyway, since I've been around, since I've learned about all this. Angela, how you doing over there?
Oh, I'm still recovering from your new info, your new intro. I'm just like, that threw me a little bit. So, yeah, can you get back to me? I need to do an inventory.
Cocaine, baby.
Well,
a flashback.
you know, as I was preparing for this, I was actually reading a talk that Roger gave in Kansas City about, you know, the beginnings of not necessarily the atheist in Alcoholics Anonymous, because that goes back to the very beginning, but just to the first ever AA meeting specifically set up for atheists and agnostics. And it started in the 1970s, and it was a Don Wilson. And what happened, he was in AA back in the early 1960s, and he had a really difficult time with it. He was put off by the religion. And Roger quoted him as saying that he was just unable to make it work because of the religious language in which the 12 steps are couched, is what he said. So in the autumn of 1974, he gave a speech at a Unitarian Universalist church. I'm not sure which one, but it was in the Chicago area, if not right in Chicago. And the talk he gave was titled, "An Agnostic in AA, How It Works for Me." It was very well received. In fact, he was invited to other Unitarian Universalist churches where he gave that same talk. And one of the ministers asked him if he would start an AA meeting for atheists and agnostics at that UU church. So he did. And they called the meeting Atheists and Agnostics in AA, or Quad A, AAAA. And their first meeting was January 7th, 1975. This is all from Roger C. So if there's any mistakes, you can blame him. 20 years after that first meeting, they had a anniversary, Quad A did, and there was a article written up in the Chicago Tribune titled "A Different Road." And Roger described that as sort of the Jack Alexander moment for Quad A. So I don't know if they had a huge boom in their meetings or not, but they were going pretty strong, so that in 2009 they actually had a unity conference. A conference where about 100 people gathered together. And Roger actually has the pamphlet from that conference where they have different topics and panels and so forth that were going on. They even had different versions of the steps that they discussed at that conference. And they called it Beyond Alcohol and Addiction, Sobriety, Sanity, and Serenity. And that all happened in the 1970s, before my time. But when I got into AA in 1988, I knew nothing about those groups. Then in the 1980s, history marches on. In Los Angeles, California, a person by the name of Charlie Polachek, and I don't know if I should use their last names even when they're deceased. I got to learn about that. But anyway, he started a group in Hollywood, California called We Agnostics. And that was the first group, I believe, Joe, tell me if I'm wrong, that was called We Agnostics that I know about.
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
It may be.
Well, maybe that
be.
was actually agnostic. I think it's possible.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Other groups
yeah,
use that name, but they they were,
but they might have
by
actually
the book.
loved the chapter at the Agnostics, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right, exactly.
Which is funny. I actually went to a conference Glenn and I did in Jacksonville, Florida, and they had a We Agnostics panel. And so we thought it was going to be all about atheists and agnostics and AA. It was all about how great the We Agnostics chapter is. Anyway, so
where was that?
So Charlie started
You were
this
kind of fading to me.
Huh? My sound is fading?
I was having trouble. Yeah. Are you having trouble hearing him, Joe?
I just turned up the volume and it was
Okay.
good.
All right. So I'm back. Okay. So anyway, and by the way, for those of you out there listening, if my volume is messed up, let me know. I'm trying to work with that and I might have it too loud right now. Anyway, so now in the 1980s, we have Charlie started that meeting in Hollywood. Then he moved to Austin, Texas in 2000, and he started another agnostic group there. And he met Nick in Austin, who started another agnostic group. And now there's quite a few secular AA groups in the Austin area. Then going on around the same time in the 1980s, in 1986, a guy named Harry from California moved to New York. And he was looking for other atheists and agnostics in AA. So he put an ad in a magazine, a humanist magazine, looking for others like him. And there were, I think, 3 other people, Ada, David, and John, who answered that ad. And they started a meeting in September 1986 that they called We Atheists. Now, they later changed that to We Humanists, and they still meet to this day in Manhattan. So during that time in the 1980s, there were groups that were started in DC and in Florida and other places around the United States. But to my knowledge, from people I've spoken with, like John H. and Dorothy and Pam, these groups kind of existed kind of isolated from each other. Is that right, Joe? There wasn't really any kind of a networking or connection. They didn't even know these other groups existed, more or less.
Imagine the savages living before Facebook, but that's right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even in just a quick little aside, in 1996, there was a We Agnostics meeting in Toronto, and I didn't know about it. Just because I was 20 years sober, I wasn't looking for new meetings, right? But if I'd picked up a meeting list and saw it, I certainly would have supported it, that's for sure. So yeah, communication was a problem for sure.
So going back to that communication piece, in Hollywood, California, there were 2 women, Dorothy H. and Pam W. And they met at the Hollywood We Agnostics group, the one that was started by Charlie P. And they loved the meetings. And being in Hollywood, they would get a lot of tourists and people from, visitors that would come to the group who had never been to a meeting for agnostics, never seen anything like it. And they'd all talk about how great the meeting was. And Pam and Dorothy asked each other, boy, are we that unique? Are there any others out there like us? They had no idea there were any other groups like them. So they did some research and they found out, oh my gosh, they have these groups in New York and they have these groups all over the place. And they had this idea, let's put on a big international conference and have all these people come together. And I think all 3 of us have attended that conference in Santa Monica, and it was called the We Agnostics and Free Thinkers and Alcoholics. No, We Agnostics and Free Thinkers and Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yeah, We Agnostics and Free Thinkers International AA Conference.
And that's where I met you, Joe. And Angela, you were there, but I don't know if I met you.
Probably not. I was there. And I remember, I met Dorothy and Pam and then Glenn. And I think I saw Joe because he was at a table signing books and stuff. But yeah, most people don't know that I'm an introvert. And so, so I didn't, I kind of talked to a few people, but I wasn't going around introducing myself and trying to get to know people because I was just feeling shy, I guess, wanted to see what it was about. And
well, I'm actually that way too. But I have to tell you that conference really changed my life. I mean, I wouldn't be here right now.
Ditto.
Speaking with you guys if it wasn't for that. It was just an amazing experience. So here I was, I'd been in AA for a long time and figured I was an atheist and learned about these groups online, started my own, and then went to this conference in California and met all these other people from all over the world. And it was the most amazing experience I'd ever had. And yeah, Joe, you want to say something about that?
Oh, about the first conference?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a game changer. Like when you look at just the increase in numbers of groups, going into the turn of the century, there were under 50 agnostic atheist meetings in the whole world. And then the internet came around and we found out about each other. And so groups were starting. But even though we didn't have this conference until 2014, there was a buzz about it back in 2012, and groups were starting all over the place. AA Agnostica was getting people together, and there were, sort of other hubs of information. But that really spearheaded it in a way that people, someone like me, someone like others, just sort of renewed their enthusiasm for AA, and they went to their hometown. One of the greatest stories I remember from that is being in a room. It was just an AA meeting, might have been hosted by Beyond Belief in Toronto, I don't know, but we're just going around talking, and someone was sharing, and everyone was listening, and they said, "It's hard, I'm the only atheist in Arizona." And there was pause, and then me too, me too, me too. And they all stood up like gophers in gopher holes, right? And some of them knew each other, but they had been closet, non-believers, and they didn't even know the other person was, a like-minded person. So they have one of the most thriving agnostic atheist communities around for the size of their state. They probably have the best per capita community I've seen.
Yeah. We found out about the conference. I think Dorothy sent an email to our website or got a hold of us through the New York list. And so that's how we became aware of that they were doing this in Santa Monica.
And you actually had people, your group actually went there as a group.
Yeah. Our group was started in 2008. And, I think I've said before, we got started by Googling, what other groups were out there. And I think we heard about the one in Santa Monica, or LA is what we call all of the stuff down there. And there's LA and New York, and that's pretty much, what we knew. And so the New York people were the ones that I think had a list of other meetings, a website with a list, and I believe they had a kind of a template for doing a meeting. And so we kind of took some of the stuff from that and created ours. And 3 of us went down to that conference in Santa Monica and checked things out. And it was fun. It was new. I loved listening to the speakers there. And there were a lot of people that were, super excited to find out that there were so many more of us out there, and hanging out with a few people. And Glenn was one of the best parts for me because, Glenn has shared this story before. But he was really distraught having come out as atheist and wasn't feeling supported in Florida where he was at, and was really concerned about it. And he's a pretty gregarious guy most of the time. So it's like totally 2 different people from the Glenn I know now and who was at the conference. And so it was kind of cool to be able to chat with him and share our experience with him, so that he left feeling like he could take on AA in Florida, and he has.
He has.
So
he's done a really great job with it. You mentioned the New York list, Angela, and Joe, you want to tell the story about the New York list, how that came about, because that was a big piece.
Well, it sure was. I don't know. At the time, Deirdre was sort of webmaster of the list. I don't know who actually started it, but just as a public service, the New York agnostic groups, there was probably 8 of them at the time, started posting an HTML list of all agnostic atheist groups that wanted to be posted or that they could find out about on there. And that's how I found out about agnostic atheists. I went to New York, went to a couple of meetings, one in the Upper West End, one down in the Village, and went to Toronto. And I was a member of a mixed crowd. I was at a meeting that had been around for a long time called Midtown, that was a very liberal meeting, but it was like right in sort of where the sort of artsy section meets the business section. So there were suits and artists and, you know, the LGBTQ community were there, a lot of young people. And, you know, so we had this meeting that had thumpers and atheists, and we all, it was a good spirited discussion every week about things, and people would always go away friendly, right? You know, even though we were very different. So anyway, I talked to some of the atheist agnostics there and said, you know, Toronto's going to love this. I was half right about that. Looking back.
So, and that list, she started it really as a result of the attack on September 11th, 2001, when when the people in New York had a really hard time connecting with each other, and they were desperate to kind of get together. So they put together that list so that they can find each other. And then what happened, I guess, is over time, other people would find them, like you and Angela, submit their own group information, and it started growing and growing and growing. And that's how a lot of us learned about this thing. I think in my early days when I was researching this, that is definitely a site that I had run across.
Yeah, and now it's hard to tell how many meetings there are, because there are groups that have no physical space. Like since the pandemic just a few months ago, meetings are on Zoom, and like in Toronto at 9:30 Eastern on a Monday night, there's a secular young people's, and it's not a Toronto meeting, it's just on the Toronto Zoom server. And so, you know, that meeting doesn't even have a physical space, maybe never will. And plenty of meetings that met once a week are meeting 2 or 5 times a week now, because it doesn't increase your rent to have another Zoom meeting.
Right.
So the number of meeting times now, it'd be interesting to try to get a handle on that, because I would love to see, like, it's not like we're catching the world on fire. Like, we are still in the neighborhood of about 600 or so meetings, and that is 0.5% of all of the meetings in the world, right? So we're statistically, we almost don't exist, right? But we're growing at a rapid rate, while AA as a whole is sort of staying rather stagnant.
So what happened after the conference? So we had the 2014, and
I'm glad you asked. So at
nice.
that conference,
you've been doing this a while.
There was a lot of excitement at that conference, and there was something that happened there. There was a little meeting held off to the side, and we were talking about some sort of a new organization that would somehow facilitate the communication of how to start secular AA meetings and all this kind of stuff. But we called them agnostic meetings back then. And so we came back and we started this thing called Waft Central, which was supposed to be sort of like kind of like an intergroup for all these different places. And so we stole Deidre's list, and then we kind of added to it. And then we put some other information from different places up there on this website. And we had, it wasn't really very well organized, because not a lot of people even knew about it, and not a lot of people even wanted it. And it just didn't really take off very well. And there was also just a lot of disputes just within those of us who were trying to start the thing about what to do with it. So, but that being said, while that is going on there, we're finagling with that little organization. The number of secular AA meetings. Oh, motorcycle.
Yeah, I got my window open.
So anyway, so the number of AA meetings really do start to increase. But now I think I'm going to skip forward to 2016. So now from 2014 to 2016, we have this little thing called WAF Central with a list. We have Deidre in New York with her list. We have Facebook groups that are starting up. People are kind of connecting. We're forming this online community now for about 2 years. Then we go to Austin, Texas, and we have a conference out there. And oh yeah, at that conference, we changed our name. We went through a couple of name changes.
It's never been the same name twice.
At the first conference, it was called just We Agnostics and Free Thinkers in Alcoholics Anonymous
International
Conference. And John...
So WAFDIAC.
WAFDIAC, yeah. And John C. from Paris was there.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And he said, where's the other A for atheist?
Atheist, yes.
Yep.
And we added the other A.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what's to talk about? Let's throw it in, right? We weren't exactly, bogged down in dogma yet. Oh, free thinker doesn't include you? Let's add an A.
Yeah.
What was funny about that, too, is I'm glad he said that because I was thinking it and I wouldn't have ever said it. And I think for me, I was just coming out as an atheist at that time and wasn't real comfortable even saying it out loud, so for him to suggest that, I thought it made perfect sense. So yeah, we added that name. So we were WAFDIAC going into Austin, and that's what we were with the 2 A's in our name. And while we were there, so I go there, and I'm talking about myself a little bit, but I go there with this thing called WAF Central that we were struggling with for 2 years that I wanted to really kind of somehow pass on to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And so
nice try.
Yeah. So we went to this conference, and I was hoping that I might have a chance to present it or whatever. And so they had this, at the end of this conference, they had a business meeting, and they changed the name of the organization or to the conference to the International Conference of Secular AA. Which was fine, which is a good idea. I'm glad. I think it made sense. They wanted to do that.
People wanted to add an H for humanist and a W for Wiccan and, naturalist. And yeah, so.
It was more inclusive.
Yeah.
It was easier to define than just being, because, like you say, if you're an atheist, agnostic, free thinker, it leaves other people out, that might be, an apathist or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I was kind of discouraged. I didn't ever have an opportunity to present this idea. I wanted to kind of turn this thing over. And I was feeling kind of dejected when I was called over to meet the new board of ICSA. Mm-hmm. And they asked me about this WAF Central thing that most people had never heard of. And I told them about it. And I said it was kind of an idea to kind of be a central point to have information about these meetings and so forth, and that was really my hope to kind of turn this over to the new board. And they did, and they started this organization. They changed the name of it from WAF Central to Secular AA, and then built this website with all the information that we had from WAF Central. And that is, so now we have that thing, that board, and we have the IAC board for the conference. We have these two things. And that kind of brings us up to where I have questions for Joe and Angela, and I would welcome calls from you if you have questions or comments and so forth, that we can talk about it. But tell me, first of all, that Joe, is there something I left out in that history?
Well, here's something interesting. Like, we think about our history going back to the first Quad A meeting, but that is inaccurate. There has always been a struggling agnostic atheist voice. We know the story of the Buddhists that changed the wording of the 12 steps, and with Bill's blessing, to accommodate their non-theistic approach. That was first reported in the 50s. In 1953, if you read the General Conference report, the whole conference was concerned about the 7-step program they were using in Scandinavia and a 6-step program they were using on merchant ships. And, we got to tell them they can't do this. And of course, Bill said, they're just going through the same pioneering phase we did. And if a better way of doing things is going to happen, where is it going to come from? We found a 1972 interpretation of the 12 Steps by B.F. Skinner. And then I was in San Francisco at the AA History Symposium doing a presentation on underrepresented populations and the debate over special purpose groups. And that included the doctors in AA, the LGBTQ community, young people's, women's. Did you know the first 4 women's conferences, 65 to 69, were in Kansas City?
Yeah, I know that little history. Yep.
Yeah. And that's kind of cool that they kept it in the same place to sort of learn the ropes. That would have been an interesting idea to leave maybe our conference in LA until we knew what was going on. And, but anyway, I digress. But I was out there and someone gave me a book called Physician Heal Thyself, 35 Years of Adventure and Sobriety by an AA old-timer. And it was the author of the same AA story, Dr. Earl M., who was in the 1955 under the young people, the 1955 second edition of the big book, and he's still in there now. But now in 1989, he's writing about all of these years, and he writes about a group he and some fellows started in San Francisco in 1965 called the Forum AA Group, which had a 10-step program, which was non-alcohol specific. Step 1 was we realized we couldn't handle mind-altering drugs safely, and there's no reference to any deity, so they could see the people who were having trouble with AA, and they were trying to accommodate them. So these sorts of liberal AA groups, I wish there's some way we could find out where they all were, but as we've discussed already, there wasn't a great communication between like-minded people in different cities, right? So there are patches of AA liberalness, of agnosticism going on as far back as AA history goes, and we just don't have the whole history yet.
So something I wanted to throw out to both you and Angela, and also to anybody who wants to call in. When we came up with that name, when the people at that conference in Austin came up with that name, Secular AA, and I don't even actually think it was voted on actually by the conference. That was just kind of a decision by that board.
I remember there was a big decision between whether it was going to be Isaac or Ixah.
Right.
And there were some other ideas bandied around, but those became the 2 most popular. And
but the Secular AA itself, that organization, which is the 501c3, whatever it is, the thing about that is, the thing that I run into with that name is that it almost makes it seem like it's apart from regular AA, because people will often will talk about, quote, secular AA as if it's something somehow apart from and different from AA. Or am I just imagining that? Do you guys run into that?
No, it isn't a perfect name, and it can be misinterpreted by people who want to separate us and by people who don't understand. Going back to the first Quad A, they were very specific about the first 2 A's were Alcoholics Anonymous for atheists and agnostics, not the other way around, right? So people's identity were AA members first, atheist agnostic second.
Right. Yeah, I wasn't at the Austin conference, so I don't have information. I can't say what exactly happened there. My understanding was were these conversations, and then that they developed the board there, and those people worked on creating the the group that was to be the leadership of the conference and come up
Stewardship.
with the bylaws and that would govern that board and continue to try to help people who identified as secular within AA start meetings and get together and have a conference and all of that. So so the name has been difficult. Some meetings have been delisted in their area because they had their meeting listed on the secular AA website, and whoever was in charge of their list in that area felt that was an outside entity because of the name. And it has come into conversations when I was on the board and was communicating with the office in New York and GSO and everything, trying to do some coordination to get us involved and more prominent at the international conference that was supposed to be in
succeeding
July.
At you were absolutely successful in that.
Thank you. But yeah, so the name is interesting. One of the things that I found that I hadn't thought about was when I was sharing about secular AA to some people locally, my former sponsor, who's Buddhist, said that she probably wouldn't look up meetings by using the word secular because she doesn't consider herself secular as a Buddhist. And so I thought that was an interesting take on it, that might be the case. And so I asked a few other people, and even though they're, free thinkers, they still don't identify with the word secular either. So, another fun stuff about the name. But I think the real thing that I think about is, like you said, is that, should the organization that exists now no longer exist, my meeting is still going to be going on. I'm still going to be a secular member of AA because I'm a member of AA and I'm an atheist. So, I think that's something that we don't talk about as much, and I think it causes some confusion within our online communities.
I would say that where there are problems with association in terms of getting listed and that sort of thing, many of these objections to the brand new atheist, agnostic, or secular meeting, those objections are red herrings. Because I remember the indie We Agnostics, they said, well, you can't change the steps. You're not going to be in our directory. Okay, we'll eliminate them.
Right.
Well, you're still not going to be in our directory, right? So they're trying to give a logical reason for, and by the way, traditions aren't rules. They're collective experience over the years, right? I can break my anonymity on national television tonight and go vote at my home group tomorrow. I'm not kicked out, right? It's up to our group how we hold ourselves out and what we follow and don't follow, because it's there's no higher authority in AA than the AA group itself. So a lot of these things are sort of negotiating points, but in many cases there's an underlying objection that isn't coming out because it's emotional, not logical.
We've got a caller. Let's take this call. Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Who is this?
This is Fred.
How you doing?
I'm okay, thanks. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. So what's on your mind?
Excuse me?
What's on your mind?
I have a question for you.
Okay, go ahead.
I recently celebrated 33 years without alcohol or this changing of mind. They say that makes you feel good. Well, I don't agree with a lot of the things that are written in the big book. and I was in plenty of meetings where God was the topic. And I found that the interesting thing is that I was asked to leave by a Baptist preacher who said that I had no right to be there if I didn't believe in God. I said, if you have an understanding of who God is, can you tell me? He couldn't answer. So, you know, the attributes that these people have who put themselves in a position to say that they know everything about God, but they can't even allow somebody to be in a meeting who doesn't want to listen to anything about what God has to do with the program, because really it's an inner world within yourself that allows you to stay sober. Not.
So do you attend an AA meeting that has a secular format? Do you have one where you live?
We don't have these secular formats for atheists or agnostics in the general area. And I've been listening to this show for some time, since you started it, and I found it quite interesting. AA is not like that in this general area where I'm at in Virginia.
You're in Virginia, okay.
And I find that there's a lot of pressures put on people when they don't agree with the big book. And I said to somebody, well, the big book was written a long time ago, and you're not aware of anything that's in people's minds today. I said, you're not. I said that's like driving a horse and buggy with blinders instead of being able to drive a car. I said it's antiquated and they don't understand.
Have you been to any of the online meetings?
Yeah. I don't go to online meetings too much. I have a friend who's a representative in Utah who she's on the phone line, and I call her sometimes. She has 40 years of sobriety, and we have some chats. I don't know what her beliefs are, but we have a good time talking. And most of my friends have passed, and some of these new kids that come in, they just don't get it right away. That they just don't have to drink in order to stay sober. That's all it is. All you have to do is just not drink, and the rest of it is all free. Because it's your own thinking. So if it's free thinking that people are talking about, that they want to think about this. Somebody said, well, the Buddhists changed the idea. What the Buddhists believe in a creator. So whether or not they didn't change anything because it existed over 26,000 years ago.
Well, I want to. We probably thank you for calling. I missed your name. What was your name? Fred. Thank you very much for calling in, and thank you for listening to AA Beyond Belief. I'm glad that you like listening to this, and I hope you can make some of these Zoom meetings that we have, because it's kind of fun. You can go and find these secular meetings just all over the place, and they all have a different flavor. But it was really nice to hear from you. Thank you so much for calling. I appreciate it.
I had one idea I wanted to mention to you.
Okay.
They talk about senses, people's senses in consciousness. Well, a smile is outside the realm of senses. And if somebody smiles at you, doesn't it make you feel happy? So, that's all you need to know is if you're happy because you see somebody smiling. That is not. There's nothing wrong with that, and people should try to be happy, but it's not always that way because this world has so many obstacles.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you,
right?
Fred.
The world has a lot of obstacles, so just keep yourself happy, and look for the ones who smile at you.
I like that. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for calling and for listening. I appreciate it. You have a good night.
Thanks, Fred.
Thank you, Fred.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
He touched on a couple of things. One, it's true everywhere. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And the experience he referred to of being escorted out for holding, a skeptical worldview. I mean, you name a tradition. I'll show you somewhere in the world where it's being violated by an AA group right now, right? I mean, that's one of those things. Like we were talking about earlier, secular phobia is something that really exists. People have biases, and they react to them more than they understand them. And I have them. We all have them. And I mean, that's just a fact that, atheists and AA is an existential threat to people who believe in a supernatural agency.
Yeah, it can be. One of the things in our area, most of the meetings are pretty tolerant and open-minded. So, I found over the years that the majority of the people really don't care about what your higher power is or hearing about it, really. And that I'm finding in this area that some of the meetings are having group consciences to stop saying the Lord's Prayer and stuff like that on their own without any of us secular people coming to them and asking for it. I think by those of us who do go to traditional meetings sometimes and sharing our experience, strength, and hope in a secular way, it's causing some of them to think about it differently when they hadn't before. So I think that's helpful. I feel like at least here, I don't think that it's that there's as much of a fighting about it as there has been in other places. That was one of the things that we found interesting when we went to that first conference in 2014 in Santa Monica is all the pain. I think Reverend Ewing wrote about it in the One Big Tent, that he wasn't aware of the pain that people felt of being felt like outcasts or cast out of AA. And we were surprised at that too, because that wasn't our experience. And we figure, in Boise, I mean, it's Idaho. We thought we would have had it, a bit more rough. But no, that wasn't the case. Our community has been really supportive of our group. So I think that that's part of why it seems like some of them are changing on their own, which is kind of neat.
That's a good point. Like there's been a lot of talk, and won't go into it in great detail here with, some of the schisms, like the Toronto delisting and all that sort of thing. Right. But the vast majority of the groups didn't care less. They were completely ambivalent about agnostic groups. They were neither for them nor against them, right? They didn't want to go, but they didn't see any reason why we shouldn't have a meeting if that's our jam. And, it was just a few, sort of loudmouth schnooks who can, sort of mess up because they get political, right? And they start rallying. And AA doesn't have many safeguards for people who want to sort of control the agenda. And that does happen from time to time.
Right. And it happens in lots of different ways. I mean, like, one person with a lot of time, I remember when I was new, she talked about openly that she had killed a meeting one time, and and that she had come into it and they had cookies and treats and things like that at their meeting, and they were discussing at the business meeting how to handle that or who was going to be the next person in charge or whatever. And she decided that she thought that was a waste of money and that they shouldn't have treats there, and that and so the meeting basically blew up because people took sides over whether they were going to have cookies at the meeting or not. And so, it's true that happens in a lot of different ways within AA, that, people have big personalities sometimes, and sometimes we place a lot of value in, one thing or the other, and take a hard stand. And so getting used to that happening is part of the game, I think, because it always seems to in one way or another.
So when we started our group in Kansas City, I was aware of what was going on in Toronto, and I had been reading some things on the internet and so forth. And anyway, so I had this bit of a rebellious streak and a bit of a chip on my shoulder when we started our group in Kansas City. I was expecting a fight, and I didn't find a fight anywhere.
Yeah.
They welcomed us with
you were bummed out because nobody wanted to fight you.
I'll never forget when I went to the first district meeting. I was just waiting for them just to give me all kinds of hell. They clapped and they applauded that I showed up at the meeting.
Yeah.
Oh man, the nerve.
They loved us, and they stopped saying the Lord's Prayer, and they were wonderful. So
I always joke that I think that in Boise they were just happy to have me be able to go to a meeting where they didn't have to hear me talk about being an atheist for a while, because they were a bit tired of it. But
keep
actually,
them all in the same place,
right? Yeah. Well, and that's what I was called, Angela the Atheist. So whenever any of them had a problem with a sponsee that was having a hard time believing, they're like, "Have you sent that person called Angela the Atheist?"
That's a great handle. I like it a lot.
Right.
Awesome. And that same in Toronto, right? The district and area never blinked to an atheist agnostic group, right? It was never even questioned, right? Because they understood the traditions.
We have
They're there to
show.
serve the groups, not lead the groups.
The traditions.
Hello.
Hey, this is Joe from New Providence, New Jersey.
Oh, hey, Joe. Boy, you're coming in loud and clear.
Yeah, it is raining out here, but
only a podcast nerd has to talk about your audio quality. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, how's Cyclone Faye treating you?
Please, go ahead.
Doing the best I can with the audio. I just wanted to contact the internet was definitely a game changer. Like I had two kind of half-hearted attempts checking it out at AA, and then in 2016 when I got out of rehab, I think I did Buddhist 12 steps, and then all of a sudden that came up, and then it kind of led to AA agnostic and atheist steps, and I think that led me to Common Sense Recovery, that book, and that helped me tremendously. And it led to AA Agnostica, AA Beyond Belief, and I was I know this kind of helps me with how handling beliefs and how, about changing the big book. That's not going to happen in my lifetime, probably, to get a more secular bent to it. But then I saw there was the meetings in New York, and then there were two in New Jersey, and I wanted to start a meeting, but I was scared to do it by myself. And then somehow the four of us kind of got together, and we started a meeting, and I think we might have been maybe the fourth one in New Jersey. And through the internet, we could do the research and see different scripts and stuff like that. And we started out kind of at a core of four people, and then now we're kind of between maybe you'd say 10 to 12 is our average. And now we have people that'll call in, with the Zoom, it'll be their first time, oh, I didn't know this existed, and I'm just checking it out. So we usually get one or two people, but they're I didn't know about this. So I think, one of the byproducts important, it's horrible that COVID and everything's happening, but we've been able to get together more secular people together, and just the internet I feel like all these people I've been into contact with, we've been gotten into contact, and it does seem like the secular, it's definitely like, I forgot who said it before, but like there's a meeting, a couple that started in New Jersey. They don't have a physical meeting, and I don't know if they will either when things go back to normal, but it is good to see more people checking it out. And then I'll just say that and then when we started our meeting, I thought I was going to have a fight too. Like we went to to get voted in, and it was just like, okay, like I thought we were going to have a fight, and we didn't. So, but anyway, thanks for putting this together.
Right on, Joe.
Hearing the history of the group.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you for calling.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Bye-bye.
Okay. Have a good night.
You bet.
It's fun to get those calls.
Yeah, it is. And the cool thing about this whole Zoom thing is all of the different time zones. Like after this podcast at sort of 10 o'clock Eastern, it's noon in Canberra, Australia. Yeah. And you can go to a meeting on Friday night that they're having on Saturday afternoon.
Right, I've been to that meeting. It's fun.
Yeah.
I've also tried to go to it several times, and then something always comes up, so I leave halfway through. So sorry, Justin. I have bombed the meeting a couple of times because I get there and then something comes up and I have to zoom out. But that's the other fun thing about Zoom meetings is that if you attend one and it's not as free thinking as you would like, or it's too free thinking, you can always zoom out and and find one that's a little bit more to your taste or belief, or you can try to use some traditions and listen and see if you learn something new. But that's something that I think Joe was bringing up before the last caller. Is I think the traditions aren't something that newer people are aware of because we don't talk about them a lot within our online communities. And so that might be something if people are interested in doing is setting up maybe some Zoom meetings that look at the traditions because there's still step meetings, but within the secular community, we don't do the traditions a lot. And I think one of the reasons for that is most of the meetings I know that are step and tradition meetings use the 12 and 12. And so that's why they go over the traditions because it's, combined in one book. And we don't do that. So.
You're such a nerd. No, I love traditions. When Beyond Belief started, we started 1 week a month doing a tradition, and the meeting always ended early. We'd read it. I mean, I don't see why people don't get how these relate to our day-to-day life, and they couldn't, right? They go, okay, so that's how AA works. Yawn. Where are we going for coffee?
Jim has made an interesting comment here. He says that Zoom is having an unintended effect on thrusting the secular AA cause ahead in the evolution of AA.
Yeah. AA ahead in the evolution of AA. I think AA as a whole is growing, and certainly we never have a meeting where one or two people don't say, I've been around, or I'd stopped going and I just heard about you guys. So it's people, closet atheists can go to an agnostic atheist meeting without their sponsor knowing now.
Yeah.
They just
That's
click
true.
and they're there. Yeah.
Right. Well, and the awareness and the connectivity, I think it helps because I do believe the larger AA or the people who are trusted servants within the general service and stuff, they're all, I can't say they're all, the majority of them are for our cause as well, and they want to be helpful in having us be integrated better. But, that's not how AA works. They don't make the decisions. It's from the groups on up. And so service is another thing that we probably, would do better to talk about in our secular meetings because I don't remember who was telling me this, that through the service structure, the majority of the work there doesn't talk about God at all. You don't generally go to a district meeting and talk about God. You talk about, what the different groups are doing and how to better help the next suffering alcoholic, that kind of thing. And I had never really thought of it that way, that, the service structure is actually probably more secular than anything else within AA.
Yeah, well, the traditions mention God once, and the concepts don't mention it at all. That's why secular-minded people are drawn to service, because who wants to go to a step 3 meeting every week?
Well, actually, I do, but only if I get to share.
We got a couple of questions on Facebook here.
Okay.
One from Mary C. in Savannah, Georgia. What's the distinction between secular and free thinker? And Mary from Arizona is saying, hey, let's not forget about the regional gatherings too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. So the difference, I don't know that there is. I'm sure there's a free thinker who might feel differently, because that's kind of what we found out from that first conference, is that they thought that free thinkers kind of encompassed. And as an atheist, I was fine with free thinker. I thought it sounded more important actually than atheist, because atheist kind of, very, can be a narrow slot for some people. But I was also fine that they did add atheist to, the name at that time, or included and stuff. So I think secular is just supposed to be without religion, and free thinker, I would guess, encompasses more than that. So.
We could do a whole podcast, or you two could do a whole podcast on identity politics.
Within AA?
Yeah, no, really, because there's nothing that aggravates me more than when someone sits across the table and explains my experience as an atheist.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I get to define what atheist means to me. I get to define what secular or free thinker means for me. And if you have a different definition, I'm not going to fight you on that. I disagree. I'm not saying you're wrong.
Right.
Those are two distinctions.
That's one thing that amazes me about when you get a bunch of us together, is we might all say that we're atheists, but we all have different ways still of describing whatever our experiences in AA. Some of us are spiritual. Some of us hate spirituality. Some of us do steps. Some of us hate steps. It's just all over the board.
Yeah. But we all tend to be loud at meeting level.
We do.
That does seem to be the... And so what was the other one? Oh, Mary had mentioned the regional. Yeah, there's been some regional conferences that we've been able to do that like Arizona is, one of the best at it, as well as you Canadians. But the Arizona one is yeah, I know, you should be. But
want to borrow a prime minister?
Yeah, thanks, please.
I went to the Arizona one last year in November, and I was very, very impressed at what they were able to accomplish for a regional level gathering. It was very cool and inspiring. And so I was excited when they were trying to do one in BC that unfortunately, had to be canceled because of COVID. But yeah, I think having more regional conferences in the future would be a lot of fun, because it was small enough that I could get to know people a little bit, or, recognize them and stuff during the conference. And like Mary, got to sit with her for a little bit, which was great.
Isn't that great? And we can do Zoom conferences too. So
right. Yeah. If only somebody would do one soon, like on emotional. Yeah. What is that called again? Emotional
sobriety.
Oh yeah.
Pay attention to Facebook on Monday. There might be an announcement coming out soon.
Cool. That sounds good. That's actually an interesting topic too. And you got some really excellent speakers lined up for that. From what I've gotten a sneak preview, I shouldn't say, but
Yeah.
that's coming soon. Joe will be announcing that really soon.
Yeah, it's not up to me, but yeah, it's got to go through the group conscience process. So,
Cool.
More will be revealed.
Excellent.
I can't believe it. We've filled up an hour. I hope that this has been an interesting podcast episode for you all to listen to. I'm not the expert in AA history at all, but I hope I gave a pretty good little summary of what got us up to this point.
Awesome.
I'm glad that Joe was here to kind of keep me straight on all of that. And Angela, it's always wonderful to have you here. It's my favorite part of the week is when Angela and I get together and do this little thing. Always a little nervous before we start, Angela, but after we get going, it's always fun.
Yes.
Oh, I mean, the great thing about this is I'm not nervous at all. It's not like my show or my blog. It's just show up. It's been great. Thanks for having me. It's been an honor. Hello, AA Beyond Belief Land. I'll be a regular listener next week.
All right.
Excellent.
And that's it.
This is only this week, right? Because seriously, I don't think I can handle it.
I promise it won't be permanent. This is just in honor of Joe. So anyway.
No, I do love that.
Thank you for listening to another episode of AA Beyond Belief, the podcast. It's been a wonderful time to be here with you again for this Friday. We'll be back again next week. I'll have to talk to Angela. There's a threat that we might want to talk about relationships and relationships and sobriety. Anyway, we'll see about that. Anyway, y'all take care. We'll be back again real soon for another episode of AA Beyond Belief.
Adios, amigos.
Bye-bye.